Welcome back. Today I'm going to try to figure out what went wrong in this daily game against Lee88, who I believe became a subscriber of this channel during this game, which went on for a few days. So, interesting side note. Also, for those of you who have been keeping track, I've reached a new high peak score on my rapid rating on chess.com, unrelated to this game, but still interesting if you've been following for some time. All right, let's take a look at this daily game. Here I opened as I normally do by playing d4, and Lee played the Indian defense, and this proceeded relatively normally, fianchettoing the bishop, getting my knight to c3, and then black castles. Nothing has gone wrong at this point. My best move, as you can see from Stockfish's recommendation, and also if you've played this position before, which I have, e4 is the best move here. It doesn't fit into the positions that I'm most familiar with, like the London system, which would be bringing this bishop out and putting this pawn on e3 and then getting the other bishop over here. But I've learned from evaluating many of these games that e4 is my best move here because that pawn is defended right now, and probably they're going to play d6 here, and then I will have an opportunity to get these bishops out to these squares, or possibly this one. And so, sure enough, they did play d6, and I played my best move, which is to help defend this knight. This also defends this pawn, and it prepares to castle. So far, so good. I know this much. My opponent, I think, is supposed to play e5 here, or at least, I mean, that's what the engine says. And I think in this opening that I followed before, if I take a look at the opening book, e5 is by far the most commonly played move in this position. That's kind of what I was expecting. So I was a little surprised when Lee played the b knight to d7, although that's the second most common move here. Still, nothing is too far off, and I think now what am I supposed to do? Oh, I'm supposed to get my other bishop out here. I just said that a few turns ago. Well, what I thought was, oh, what about here? And I think that was the first place where I started going wrong. I definitely should not have done that. I could have castled here and been fine. I could have put my queen here, or I could have gotten this bishop out. These three moves listed just above me, all of those would have been okay. I just saw that maybe it's time to break here. And so I played e5, which turns out to be inaccurate. But Lee didn't respond by taking, which is kind of what I had expected. I thought if he took and I took, he would take back, and then we could trade off our queens. I would castle and we'd be fine, and it would be simpler. That's one reason I don't mind queen trades early in the game, is because it makes things simpler. Queens can do so much and require far more calculation, to at least for me, than most of the other pieces, just because they can go so far in so many different directions. So I'm always fine with a queen trade. But Lee did not play that, taking, which was his best move. Also, it would have been okay, Stockfish says, to just go ahead and put this knight back there, and then wait for me to take, I guess. But instead, Lee played that, and that threw me off, I'll admit. So I examined this position for some time. I did not examine any, certainly not the best move that Stockfish is suggesting. Okay, so this is where I went wrong then. And according to the little graph across the bottom of my screen that you can't see, this was the greatest advantage that I ever held in this game. I should have played g4 here. I guess because that knight is trapped. Let's see. The knight couldn't go there because of my pawns. It could go there, right? Why could, oh, my bishop. My bishop is guarding that square. Okay. And, of course, it couldn't go back where it was because of my pawn, and it can't go where its own piece is. Okay. So I do understand why Stockfish is suggesting g4. I guess, despite the engine always suggesting these, that I don't look at them because of all that training to keep these pawns. I say all that training. I haven't had any formal chess training, as I've mentioned here before, but all the lessons, the tips for beginners, opening principles, all these lists and things that people have told us. Every forum post where people are, talking about how can I improve as a beginner and so forth. They all talk about not moving these pawns in front of the king because you're going to castle. Get the king to safety, one of the opening principles. So that's why I never even considered this. Maybe in the future I will, because that's definitely would have given me a huge advantage. And Stockfish says if I had played that, which I didn't even consider it, but if I had played that, they would have just left that knight there. Interesting. You see that, right? Knight captures e5. D captures e5 is their second best move, and c5 is their third best move. None of their moves involve moving this knight. So they're not even going to try to get away, not even going to try to damage my pawn structure. Just going to go ahead and let me do this and then have an open file for my rook here, I guess. So I guess if they're going to lose a knight, they said take a pawn out with it. Again, if I had played g4, which I didn't. So they would do this, and then I wouldn't take this with my pawn. Why wouldn't I take it with my pawn? That's my third best move. But what would happen if I took that with my pawn? See, I would lose a bunch of advantage. Oh, because they would do this? No. Did I read that wrong? No, they would do this. Okay. That's why. Because then I would lose my ability to take this knight if I took this pawn, this knight with my pawn. I would take it with my knight, and my knight now is guarding this pawn. But now that this pawn is gone, they can move this knight back, is their best move. If they take this one... Wait, what if they took here? It says it would be by far be better to take this pawn than to take the knight. That I don't get. What would happen if I took the knight? I would lose all my advantage and they would take here. And it says I wouldn't try to move this knight out. My best move would be here. Why wouldn't I move this knight out to say e4 or... Well, I don't have any great places to put it. What if I did that? Oh, wow. Oh, because of f4? See, I would have had to have followed all this out to play g4. That's why I guess why I didn't do it. So let's go back here. Because I wouldn't have just lost. What would have happened if I had seen g4? And if they played their best move, I would have probably just taken that knight, and then I would have lost this 4-point advantage because I didn't understand all those other possibilities. Well, since I had already moved this here, what I played was I took that pawn. And that turned out to be counted as a blunder because it's not a blunder because it was a bad move. It's a blunder because I didn't find g4, according to Stockfish. Okay, and they did not take back with... Well, actually, Stockfish says it doesn't matter. So Lee chose the c pawn, which I probably would have to because now black is left with two center pawns, whereas I've lost one of my center pawns. And they've opened a path for their queen, should it need to get out at some point. Like if I ever move this bishop, their queen can go here and threaten my b pawn. So I probably would have made that same move as well. I still have a slight advantage. Of course, I don't know this during the game. It says now I should play bishop to g5. Wouldn't they just do this then? If I played... What does that do? I mean, it pins that pawn, but wouldn't they just push this one? Stockfish says they wouldn't. Stockfish would not push the f-pawn right now. I'm almost certain that if I were playing black in this position, I would push the f-pawn just to tell that bishop, like, what are you doing here, man? And then what would I do if they did that? I would just come back. And they've blocked their own bishop, I guess. Well, now it says they could... Oh, because if they do that, then I do it again. But if they don't do that... Oh, and now their knight has nowhere to go. Maybe that's why that wasn't good for them. Okay. Well, I wouldn't have seen g5 in the first place. I did see this, and I thought, well, they have two center pawns. One way I can keep that center pawn down there, which Stockfish is saying I can keep it down there with this move, but I thought I could keep their e-pawn there by pushing d5. Obviously, that's not listed as one of the choices. I don't know what's so bad about it. It wasn't counted as a mistake or anything, but that's what I played. You know what? I do see what's not great about it. Right now, the d-pawn is guarding both of those squares, preventing the knight from going to either one of them. And now I've allowed the knight to either one of them, and in fact, Stockfish says that one is their best move. Okay. No, second best move. It actually say, oh, we can't decide between knight to b6 or knight to c5. Either one of those are great, it says. But I allowed this by moving my d-pawn. What I thought I was doing by moving my d-pawn was preventing their e-pawn from moving forward. Okay. And but they didn't play either one of those. They also didn't trade off that bishop, which I don't think that's the third best move. Or maybe my understanding of this position is all wrong, but I thought one of the ideas of having this bishop here was to patrol this diagonal, not just to give it away for a knight. But the engine thinks that wouldn't be bad for black, to give that bishop away for the knight and double my pawns here. Okay, Lee played knight to f6, which seems like a good idea, but Stockfish says that's a mistake. I have no idea, but my best move here was to castle, and that's what I did. Obviously, I don't know. I'm up nearly +2. Okay, so very soon something went wrong. I don't remember exactly when, but I think it was around here when Lee commented in the chat, which on chess.com I have the chat disabled most of the time. Sorry about that. But on Lee Chess, I don't think there is a way to disable it. At least I haven't found one. But it was about here that Lee commented in the chat that, hey, I just realized you have a YouTube channel. It's listed in my profile on Lee Chess. So I assume Lee had looked at my profile and saw that I was Random Chess Person on YouTube and said he subscribed, or she possibly, subscribed to my channel. And I thought, oh, I don't know if that gave me stage fright or not. It's possible. It's possible. And Lee, I'm not blaming what happened on that. So you were perfectly fine to message me, and I really appreciate the message in the chat. However, it is possible. So I began thinking, oh, wow, should I, I'm probably going to mess up now. So I guess there was a little bit of stage fright there. Okay, a6 is what Lee is supposed to play here. Rook to e8. I get rook to e8 because you do want to move this e-pawn at some point, and you're going to want the rook behind it to support it. I get that. Stockfish recommendation. Lee just jumped ahead and played e5 now. And yes, I do know about en passant, and I considered taking it. But this was my thinking about why I should not capture with en passant at this point. I thought if I did that, couldn't Lee just take back? And now I have no center pawns, and Lee has two. Yes, they're disconnected into pawn islands, so to speak, whereas my pawns are, 3 over here and 3 over here. 6 and 6, whereas his are a little bit more separated than mine, but they're central pawns. And I don't know enough about chess and pawn structures to know whether it's better to have my 3 together and 3 together, or whether it's better to have center pawns. I know opening principles, which talk about controlling the center and having center pawns. So I thought that would have been better for Lee. Stockfish says it would have been better for me. Well, now I know that. Now I know that there are places where that's best. So when Lee played e5, I decided against that because that would give him an extra center pawn and I would have none. Failing that, it says I should have played rook to e1 or just h3. Even though that knight is still there, there's no more talk of me playing g4 for some reason. And that is my top move. But I decided that knight's just sitting there getting in my way in general. Also, now that this pawn is in the middle, this knight can come here and be protected by that pawn. So I decided to get rid of that knight, and I moved my knight back here and decided to trade my light squared bishop for it. I have determined that even though this bishop hasn't moved yet, that my light squared bishop is quote-unquote my bad one. I don't know enough about good and bad bishops to know whether that's the case. But I do know that my own pawns block this bishop. So I decided to trade it for this knight to damage the pawn structure around the king. That turned out to be a blunder. And I don't know why. I mean, obviously Stockfish said that was my best move and I didn't play it. But this turns out to be a huge blunder, and that is because, oh wow. Let's back up one. Remember where I said I wanted to get rid of this knight because now that this pawn's here, the knight's going to have this great spot. And so I decided to trade my light squared bishop for it. Well, after I move this knight, actually whether I move that knight or not, Lee can still put his knight on that f4 square, guarded by this pawn. And now I've blocked in my own dark squared bishop, so I can't trade the other bishop for the knight. That's why that was bad, because it allowed the knight to go to the square where it was going to go anyway, controlling all sorts of things around here. And it says it's not worth it to try to challenge it with the pawn. Oh, well, yeah, if I did that, then there's check over here. I create all kind of weaknesses. And see, remember earlier Stockfish really wanted me to challenge that knight with g4, but now it says no, keep these pawns right where they are. Maybe play a4 now. Or knight to b3. Okay, I do get knight to b3 because that would have opened up the dark squared bishop. Get rid of the annoying knight, break up their pawn structure just a little bit. That would have left this pawn all alone, and it's currently blockaded. It would have moved this e-pawn over to the f file. Yeah, I get knight to b3, the second best suggested move. I don't know. Yeah, it says we wouldn't have ended up trading there anyway. They would have come down here and taken my bishop at that point. Well, I didn't see knight to b3, but I did see that they're trying to trade it off for the light squared bishop. I wanted to trade it off over here, remember? Because it wasn't that I wanted to get rid of my bishop, but here I could have gotten rid of the bishop and damaged the kingside pawn structure at the same time. That's why that was attractive to me over there on the H file. But now it says just to let them trade here, but I didn't want to trade here. I wanted to trade on my own terms over there. So I decided to move my my bishop to get it out of that, and I put it there. That's inaccurate. Because, oh. But that's not threatening anything though, is it? Give me a second. I'm trying to figure out why knight to d3 is so good. If I had been playing against Stockfish at this point, it would have put this knight right here. Oh, maybe because it failed to trade off for my light squared bishop, it wants to trade off for my dark squared one, which cannot move right now. So if Lee had played this, it says just move up a pawn and complete your pawn chain, or put your queen here, and no matter what I do, yeah, they're going to trade this knight for the dark squared bishop. So it wasn't even looking for an outpost here. That knight was just there on its way, and that's why that was bad, because it unguarded the d3 square. Okay, I do understand that. And maybe Lee, if you're watching, you will understand this, that by me moving my bishop out of that danger of that trade, I unguarded the d3 square. Nobody's protecting it. You can go there. I can't move my bishop. It's completely blocked in by my own pieces, and because I failed to develop it, you can hop your knight in there and then get that next turn. Fair enough. What Lee chose to play was h5, which Stockfish wasn't really fond of, but I think later on turned out to be crucial At least I remember these pawns getting pretty dangerous with me later. I'm supposed to play c5 now. Nope. Stockfish changed his mind. It again wants knight to b3 or c5 or just put this back. Oh, because he can still go there. Oh, wow. Well, see, I didn't realize that was such a big deal. Now I do. Okay. This is why that's my third best move, because it reguards that square. And yes, they'll trade for it if I put this bishop back here. Well, actually it says now they wouldn't for some reason. I have no idea why. Oh, it says they would develop another piece at that point. Oh, also pointing at that square. See, this is the kind of thing that engines and higher level players see all the time that we don't see, apparently. Neither Lee nor I saw this, that the d3 square is very important right now. Now later in the game it might be a different square, but you hear grandmasters talking about this, or even international masters, these other people that have these highfalutin chess channels, constantly talking about the crucial blank square, and they're talking about e4 and d5, and in this case it looks like it's d3. It keeps wanting the knight to go there. Now it's wanting their bishop to go here to guard that square. It's wanting my bishop to come back here to guard that square. I think one of the reasons it's suggesting me to go knight to b3 is so that this bishop has an escape route. But right now that square is really crucial. Well, I did defend that square with my queen. Because yes, I did notice at some point that this square is undefended. I decided to go that way with it. That turns out to be inaccurate. And the reason that Lee did find is that. Bishop to f5, which he was going to play anyway, according to Stockfish. And Lee found it. So good job, Lee. That kind of refutes the whole point of me putting my queen there. So, I don't know what I should have done here. What should I... Oh, I did what I should have done. Okay. I thought, you know what? I can put one of these knights here. I know that Lee has two pieces guarding this square, but I have 4 pieces guarding that square. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I thought if I put one of my knights there, and they take it, and I take, and they take, I can put a knight there, or a queen, and I'll be in control of that square. It took me a while, if I remember right, it took me a while to decide which knight to go with, and I don't remember why I chose this. I think I chose the D knight. Oh, Stockfish has changed its mind now. Now it says to put the bishop there. How about that? Or just to run away with my queen. Okay, well, I chose the D knight because I wanted to be able to get my queen out of there if possible. So I did play knight D to e4, thinking that now I can get my queen out of this pen if I need to. Okay, but I'm still down a little bit. And, oh, and now Lee has a semi-open file he needs to put his rook on, according to Stockfish. Or just go ahead and take this, trade off these knights. Yeah, that would have been fine too. Or keep going down here. Well, Lee's next move was counted as a blunder, but I don't know why. It looks like it adds an extra layer of protection to this knight, which... I'm trying to come to grips with what Stockfish is suggesting. Stockfish is suggesting I should play h4, possibly. And it says they would then push past. Well, I'm very proud of myself that I did find the best move here. My thought was... Remember how I said I had 4 pieces guarding this square? Well, I put one of them there, so now I only have 3 pieces guarding that square. And they still have these 2 attackers on this square. And I thought if I move my queen out of the pin, which was the reason I chose the D knight in the first place, remember? to get my queen out of the pen. If I get my queen out of the pen, then I've only got 2 defenders left on that square. I had 4 just a move ago. And if I move my queen, I'm only going to have 2. Well, I thought I can take that knight with check. And that bishop's undefended. Honestly, I thought if I took this knight with check, he would take back with the bishop and I would win this bishop. Because remember on all those puzzles where when the undefended piece is pinning my knight to my queen, the answer is to move that knight. Well, so I thought of that, and Stockfish says it is my best move. So I played that. But he took back with the queen. Is that what it says was his best move? Yeah. His only move that wasn't a blunder. I don't know why I thought he would take with the bishop, but he did. So now this bishop's not undefended anymore. Now I have to move my queen, or just put my bishop in the way. I could put my bishop in the way. I did that. That's what I did. Okay. So I'm doing okay here. We're 16 moves in. We're doing okay. But I didn't know that in this game. At this point in the game, I thought I was lost. I thought all these pawns are coming. This knight's at the front. I can sacrifice for it, but that just... He's going to take back with the g-pawn, I thought. Or actually, it didn't matter which one he took back with. He's going to have 3 connected pawns just falling on my king. It says his best move is to take, and he did. My best move is to take back, and I did. Those were obvious, I think. And then he finally got this rook over here that Stockfish wanted him to do earlier, controlling the semi-open file. My only thing guarding that pawn is my queen, so it probably makes sense to play b3. Is that my best move? Okay, not too bad. Nice pawn chain. Now I can move my queen and don't have to worry about the rook taking here. Wait. It wants him to just pull his queen back 1. Or the rook he just moved over there, it says to move it over here. That's crazy. And that's what he did. Well, because now that this pawn's can't be threatened anymore, I guess, not sure why that was good. But Stockfish says it was. Okay. I still have a very... Oh, no, we're even now. 0-0 after 18 moves. What should I have done? Rook b1. To get out of that, I guess? Well, I wasn't going to see that. Bishop d2. That makes sense. One of my only undefended pieces on this whole board. The only undefended piece on the whole board is the knight. And the only undeveloped piece on the board is the bishop. Okay, that makes sense. Opening principles should have told me that. Bishop to d2. I have no excuse for why I played this. Stockfish counts that as a mistake. You know what? I do have an excuse as to why I played that. It hits this pawn. But that's the only thing I can think of. I don't know. They could just stop that. I don't even remember what I was thinking here, but I knew I needed to develop the bishop. I just didn't realize that that would have been a better square. Okay. I don't know how Lee found this, but he did. Why is that good? Stockfish said that was the best move. Oh, okay. I think I see why it's the best move. The queen was in the way. This just gets the queen out of the way of the f-pawn. Okay, that makes sense. Good job, Lee. And now Lee has an advantage. And now... Earlier it wanted me to put this here, but now it wants me to bring that rook all the way over to d1, which to point it at the back of my pawn that can't go anywhere? What? Why? Oh, now it's changed its mind. Now it wants me to bring that all the way over to here. I mean, that makes a little more sense. It guards the bishop. Keeps that pawn from advancing, allows me to get my queen out of the way, I guess. Yeah, that's what it says. My next move would be to get the queen out of the way. Well, I did that, which tells you the reason I moved it there was to take that undefended a pawn. That was an inaccuracy, And Lee played his best move. The whole reason he moved his queen was to play that f-pawn. I should have seen that coming. Maybe I did see it coming. And now I'm supposed to bring this back to c2. Because the knight's still one of my only undefended pieces, so I guess it makes sense to go there. What did I do instead? Oh, I did that. What? That is also inaccurate. Okay. But why? Why is that inaccurate? Like, what's so much better about this? Because it said queen to c2 was my best move. Well, now they're going to play this, right? Which will be guarded by the f-pawn that just got there. And by the rook. And that will permanently keep my queen out of there. So why was that so much better than what I played? But somehow this is much worse. And they can still play e4, but h4 is better now in this position. I don't know why. Look at that. That's just what I was afraid of, and it's happening anyway. h4 is the best move, and that's what Lee played. And I should have played knight. Nope, it's changing its mind. I should have moved my king. I should have played knight to b5. I should have brought this rook over. Stockfish saying I really don't have a shot either way. I guess I had second thoughts about coming here, and I moved my queen there. Why did... And that was worse. I think what it was is I just didn't know what to do about this. And, I mean, you saw the evaluation. There wasn't much I could have done about it anyway. Lee pushes forward e4, which I think in this position it might be coming soon that he needs to pull his knight back somewhere to get out of the way of these other pawns to catch up. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know where he... Well, you don't want to put your knight there, probably. And now, here. So every one of these positions has a different best place for this rook. Because earlier it wanted it here, then it wanted it here and here. And now, my best move is to put it on c1. Oh, you know what? Because this knight can come in here again. Well, then why does it want my rook there? If the knight can go to c1 again. Look at that. It says it wants me to put my rook here. And then it says the knight will probably come there. And then just leave it and move my knight over here and let him take my rook. It says they wouldn't take my rook then. Well, I wouldn't leave it there, so of course they wouldn't take it. I wasn't going to put it there in the first place. Okay. Well, I decided to bring this bishop back after being over there. In hindsight, I probably should have brought it back to e3 to maybe try to trade off here and break up this pawn structure. It's not one of the top moves, but I was deciding to bring it back. I'm just looking at maybe I should have brought it here. But I decided to bring it here as a desperate counterplay. That's a mistake. And in fact, Stockfish says he can just ignore that and keep playing with his pawns over here. He can put his queen up a little bit, or he can take my bishop. That's fine too. But by far, h3 is better. And Lee chatted later that this was probably a mistake or a blunder, and Stockfish counts that as a blunder. I really don't know why. Because that bishop, I mean, it was pointed. That's why it wanted me to move the rook. Oh my god. Okay. Well, you can see I still have a lot of work to go. Okay. Well, and he played his top move here. And I think this is becoming an unstoppable force. My own pawn is in the way and it's blockaded, so I can't check the king from here. I would like to check the king from here, but I can't. I can't go down there because I just traded off my dark squared bishop. I can't take a pawn with anything. I could maybe do this, but then I think that pawn would just go past. What does it say I should do? Oh, try to trade off queens. Okay, well, maybe I should have done that. Well, remember a couple of turns ago when Stockfish said that was my best move? I played that now. It's a blunder now. Mate in 5. Mate in 5. But one thing about that knight being where it was is that knight guards this square. And when I moved it, nothing's guarding this square except my opponent's knight. And even though Lee at this point needs to put his queen in here and start checkmating me, nothing can stop this checkmate. Watch this. If Lee plays... Why can't Lee play that? Why isn't it letting me play that? Okay, it wasn't letting me play that because I had lost my internet connection. All right. Well, that's because I live in a third world country. But if Lee had played this, nothing can stop mate. I mean, he's threatening mate here right now. And, I mean, what happens if I try to block it this way? Well, then there's this, which is check. And I can get out of it one of two ways. If I get out of it to h1, then that's mate. And if I get out of it to here, that's not quite mate because I can go up there, but then that's mate. Okay, so backing up to where I moved my knight out of the way, quit guarding this square. Lee just saw that that square was open and that this is a fork of my king and queen. And I almost resigned because I saw this right before he moved. But I thought I'll make sure he sees it first. Honestly, I didn't see the mate either, so don't feel bad, Lee. I didn't see the mating sequence. But he saw that, and so I resigned at this point. So what went wrong was not that last knight move, although that was the blunder that they gave it all away. I started going wrong way back here when I should have just played rook b1. And again, I think that's to get it out of a long term here, but I wasn't going to see that. Or bishop to d2. Or g3 even. But I wasn't going to play g3 because of the check. Right? If I played, instead of, I could play bishop g3 here, wouldn't they just check me? And then I would get out of check. Oh, I'd get out of check up, and I would have an advantage. Oh, because the knight has nowhere to go, and they would have, well, they would protect it this way and give it a place to go. But I would have a noticeable advantage if it had gone that way back here. And that's right there. That's the move that sent us down the dark path, and I don't think I understand why it was so much worse. And it's really not that much worse. It's less than off. But after that, everything just crumbled. And this wall of pawns became unstoppable. And good job, Lee, for seeing that later queen to h6 to get out of the way of the f-pawn and so on. It was a fun game. I think I learned a couple of things here. I don't really fully understand why this is so much worse than this. But we're working on it. We're going to get there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.